reason I've been so involved in drifting is it's literally the extreme sport of motorsports, like skateboarding and BMX and all that. It's a judged sport. You go out there, you throw down your sickest run with the sickest tricks and just express yourself, you know, show that I'm down to hit the wall to get extra points. I'm down to go backwards here, make tons of smoke, shift to the next gear. Whatever you got to do, you know, you can just get out there and push it past the limits. Yo, it's Chelsea Denofa here. We're getting ready for our 2012 Formula Drift season. We just won back-to-back XDC championships. We felt good last year. We did a few more modifications of the car. We're really trying to run with the big guns and bring a machine gun to this fight. We've done a lot of stuff prepping for it. I've been driving for about 10 years now, and we've been debating going into Formula D for the past 4 years. Kept putting it off, so we definitely know we're prepared and ready, and we're just gonna blow shit up. I'm ready. Took our championship-winning car from last year. We took a few things off the car, changed a few things. We put a new Garrett GTX 3582 turbo, some new boost control stuff, a new Synapse wastegate. We also did a few other new modifications to the engine. It's a fully built Technica Motorsports 3-liter engine. And then we're now on hand-cooked tires. We got tons of grip and tons of smoke. The car's so stable in drift, it's absolutely insane. And we just kind of went over the car, you know, with a fine-tooth comb and fixed all the things that we thought needed to be fixed, and, you know, upgraded those things where over the last 3 years we've been working to build this car to be competitive. And we've got a good car, and we're pumped to drive it. We left from Orlando at the BC Racing headquarters, and we shot to Atlanta to dyno tune the car, did a few other tweaks. We left from there, went to Houston to pick up Cody Slack, the man behind the camera, and then we shot out from there straight to Cali, nonstop. 4 guys in the rig, sleeping, driving, you know, making it happen. Then we shot out to Willow Springs for a test day. On the way there was this insane windstorm, like 80-mile-an-hour winds. Wound up blowing the back of the trailer off, roofs hanging off the side, so we did a quick fix on the side of the road with some ratchet straps. Got to get out to the track. You know, that was kind of the first of our bad luck of the trip. We made 3,000 miles flawless, and then we go 100 miles down the street to test and blow the roof off. Some say it's because my car's so rad. I don't really know, but so we went to Willow and tested. It was a good test day. Shook the car down. Car made great power. Everything was good. Then we loaded it up and shot back to the Anaheim area to fix a few things for tech and roll in.
All the time, can't be no girl forever on that bracelet that she bought online. Could be too good and take it, might I say I still away ya, cause I'm taking all your city like I'm Carmen San Diego. I'm smoking, I'm on fire, I am blazing, don't get hurt. To my wife, this is a concert. To my black nurse, this is church.
Next, we went out for qualifying. It's definitely interesting things. My first Formula D event, there's 62 drivers, so tons of cars on grid, 2 different groups. I mean, qualifying literally took 4 hours. It was crazy. My first run out, I went in, did a great run, got a good score of a 66. We lost 10 points because I didn't hit the speed. I was 52.8 and I needed to be 53. So I knew in the second lap I had to step it up a notch on the radar spot. So we stepped it up, got it to 57 miles an hour, which is like in the top bracket of speeds through there. Had good angle, hit all the clips, tapped the wall on both runs. So we had a really solid second run. Put us in 22nd place. We have to tandem first run against Osbo, which I'm super stoked to do. He's got a real aggressive driving style, rides the walls, makes tons of smoke. So we're pumped.
Oh baby, I like it raw. Yeah, baby, I like it raw. Oh baby, I like it raw. Yeah, baby, I like it
Today's Saturday. We had an awesome day today. Earlier in the morning we had tandem practice for an hour and a half. Did a super gnarly job in tandem. The car is hooked up, it's fast, it's consistent, tons of angle, lots of smoke, hitting the clips. We felt really good going into it. Our first tandem battle was against Frederick Osbo. He drives an EP.1 Cine TC, full factory back ride. We knew we had to bring the heat with him. When I left the line, I shifted into second gear, got onto the power, and the shifter threw it out of gear back into neutral, giving him about a 10-car gap at the first clipping point. I initially thought that it was over, there's no way. But our hand-cooked tires and our Garrett turbocharged power pushed through, and on the last clipping point we were right on his door. Although it wasn't an ideal run, it still was one of those runs where the judges and everybody knew that it was possible that I could keep up. During the lead run, of course I was a little upset about the whole mishap in the first run, so we went 130%. Shifting to fourth when we hadn't shifted there before, just to make tons of smoke, riding every wall, every clip. I threw it backwards into the last turn to kind of jumble things up a little bit, and he was just there, a car length behind me the whole time, so he definitely raised supreme on this one, and we're going to take everybody out in the next round.
Standing in the rain with his head hung low, couldn't get a ticket, it was a sold-out show. Heard the roar of the crowd, he could picture the scene, put his ear to the wall, then like a distant scream, he heard one guitar just blow him away. So strong in the night, and the very next day, or a beat up 6 in a second-hand store. Didn't know how to play it, but he knew for sure that one guitar felt good in his hand. Didn't take long to understand. Just one guitar slung way down low was the one-way ticket, only one way to go. So he started rocking, ain't never gonna stop. Gotta get
BC round 3 ended up being extremely successful. We showed up at the track with our US Air Force BMW M3 and wound up winning the event. I'd like to thank XDC for throwing an awesome event and for all the airmen and fans that came out. Formula Drift is just one of those things that takes up an immense amount of time, an immense amount of skill, an immense amount of people, and our team works non-stop. Like, I come home from work, we go to the shop, we're working from 6:30 to 2:30 at night, every night after work. We're kind of a small, tight team. There's only like 5 of us. We don't have any huge money backing. BC definitely helps us out a lot with everything, but we have a good group of sponsors and a good team, and we're all just here to do it and have fun. We left for Atlanta on Tuesday afternoon, drove the rig up to stop at Technical Motorsports because we had a driver in the ECU fail for our coil pack. So we were working on trying to get that fixed, and those guys are the king of the factory ECU, so we got that taken care of. We also did a few alignment changes and found a failed rear control arm bushing, so we replaced that as well. And then we pretty much rolled up to the track and set up for our weekend of radness.
Fuck these haters, I kill them all if I could. Ain't scared of none of y'all, so you know my aim good. Blowing Bin Laden in my Porsche 911. Just left ground zero on my way to Cushing. Can't slow down to my devil in my rear view. Sometimes you wanna scream to God, but he can't hear you. And even if he did, that's a part of his answer. Fuck complain about it, ain't like you got cancer. On the block, they got it worse. Fuck the love and the hate, that's just a trap, niggas curse. I bet you feel like the whole world ain't know.
On Thursday, Formula D was nice enough to rent out the track and give us a paid practice. So we had a 4-hour day of basically full practice. Whatever you want to do, set up the car. We were running the new layout, which nobody had run yet, so we were working on that, setting up the car. We were dialing in some more grip because the guys definitely were faster here than they were in Long Beach. There was a few guys out there that even after we dialed the car in, we couldn't keep up with.
In this big penthouse, all elevated up, black hardwood floors, just to sit around and feel like it ain't yours. You just got you feeling like. All right, here I know. Whoa, na 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 na. Oh, na 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 na. Sim Simma, who got the keys to my bimmer? Who am I? The girls them sugar. How can I make love to a fella in the rock? Pass me the keys to my truck. Who am I? The girls them love. And I we make love to pressure stuff. Who will come up and get ready? You got come up with it. Drop in your nigga like your nigga, they are stitching. Drop in your action like a plug, you wanna chop it. Drop in your dick action like a plug, you wanna chop it. It's like a river side up on the bank, you know take it. It's like a bike, you know the way they stand up. You want to show your back, you want to say you grab it. Girl, she a beg you wanna ball, take the stop it. Batman plug in and she a move on the electric. It's like a basketball, she take time on me back it. Listen to me silent, listen to the lyrics. I mean the man, they and me a drop it. I said, Sim Simma, who got the keys to my bimmer? Who am I? The girls them sugar. How can I make love to a fella in a rush? Pass me the keys to my trucks. Who Who am I? The girls them lock, and I we make love to pressure. Anything she want, I will give it up.
On Friday, we woke up a little bit early, went to get some VP race fuel and set up the rig for all the fans that were going to come in, and just cleaned up a few things to get everything ready for the big day. And we went out for qualifying. Our first lap out, we got an 88. It was a pretty good run. It was my conservative run, but it was still, you know, a pretty solid run. We were psyched to hear 88. We got the speed and the mile an hour that we needed. It was 35 miles an hour. And then our second run, I was a little bit off on the outer clipping point, so I just kind of tried to make it up throughout the rest of the run by making as much smoke and sitting at full lock the whole lap. And we actually wound up spinning on the last turn because I totally boiled the tires over because I was literally doing an anger burnout throughout the entire track. It was ridiculous. There was a lot of smoke. We wound up going up for the qualifying meeting and we ended up 18th place, so we were pretty pumped on that, but we were supposed to be between 6th and 10th place by our math, and then they announced that they were having radar problems going up the hill and that it wasn't reading like it was in practice. Even though we had hit the speed, the people who didn't hit the speed got 10 more points, which pushed me back. I understand that Formula D has like a lot of things to deal with and a lot of things to do. I mean, they handled it correctly. It's just for the few people that did hit the speed, it definitely affected us in our overall qualifying. After they announced qualifying, we went out for practice. It was a lot cooler outside because at night the track wasn't getting baked in the sun, so the grip levels were up. Everybody was picking up 4 or 5 miles an hour throughout the entire track. I was able to hold angle where I wasn't able to before. I was coming up shallow on a few spots, so it was good to actually get out there and drive the track on what would be, you know, our top 16 battles. So there was a lot more grip, like I was saying, and coming out of the horseshoe, I was tandeling with Dennis, and I clutch kicked the car to come out, and I heard a bang in the rear. We finished the lap and then rolled back to the pits to find out that we had tore the subframe out of the car, and because of that the diff ears had broken out of the car and also broken an axle all at the same time. The transmission was also making some noise, so we knew it was going to be a long night. That night we spent literally probably 6 hours pulling the tranny, subframe, diff, everything out of the car. The next morning we grabbed all the parts, jumped on it, Technical Motorsports came and my crew, everybody stayed and got in and on hand, got everything done, and we rolled right up at 2:30 when we were supposed to for a practice session to test out the car and make sure it was good. Everything was great and we were ready for the top 32. Of course, I qualified 18th and I had to go up against Daigo Saito, the Formula D, aka new Rookie of the Year, trying to take us all out with his 1200 horsepower Lexus. I left the line, he led first, came into the first turn, was on his door all the way down the hill. We both had really good line. He slowed down a little bit at the first clipping point, which pushed me to the inside. While I was coming in, I had downshift to run a slightly shallower line to catch up to him in the keyhole. So when I got on power, the car actually straightened. And after it straightened, it pushed me really wide. It was one of those things where he had a 5 or 6 car lead and I had straightened anyway, so the run was a huge advantage to Daigo. On the second run, I knew that the only way I was going to beat him is if I just totally either blinded him with smoke or I just completely outdrove him to the point where, you know, they maybe would do it one more time. So we lined up to the grid. I revved the car like 6,000 on the grid and dumped the clutch, went as fast as I could down the straightaway. I wound up putting like two and a half cars on him on the straightaway, threw the car in, drove the fastest line I possibly could through the track while still maintaining angle. It was one of the better runs definitely throughout the day and throughout the weekend for me, so I felt pretty confident. We left it in third all the way through the horseshoe, made tons of smoke through the last 2 turns, and I stretched them by, by eight cars by the last turn and going up the hill. So it was definitely a huge advantage to me for that run, but since I had made such a huge mistake in the first run, the win definitely went to Daigo. The next event is in West Palm Beach, and we're hoping to fix some transmission issues I have for shifting. We're also going to change the rear end gear so that we're only using 3rd and 4th and not 2nd and 3rd so much, so that should make the shifting easier. I just need to learn how to shift, so I'm going to start driving a manual car every day so I can figure out how to do what 90% of you people watching can handle. So, we're going to get that handled and figured out. We're going to put a wing on the car for a little bit more downforce, pick up some more speed, and I can't wait to go down to West Palm and drive pretty much in my hometown.
Sun beat down, I heard the radio on. I was driving, trees went by, me and Del were singing Little Runaway. I was flying, yeah, running down a dream that never would come to me, working on a mystery, going wherever it leads, running down a dream. I felt so good, like anything was possible. Hit cruise control, run by. The last 3 days, the rain was unstoppable. It was always cold, no sunshine. I'm running down a dream that never would come to me, working on a mystery, going wherever it leads, running down a dream.
This is Staff Sergeant Austin Dalrymple with the United States Air Force. Chelsea drives a pretty sweet M3 BMW. He's definitely one of the most exciting drivers that I've seen out here. Definitely puts on a show. Even yesterday in practice, he was trying to impress, and I think he did a very good job at that. And all the guys I had with me yesterday were very impressed with how he conducted himself with us and gave us some tips, and definitely how his driving is. It's something impressive. We have a lot of adrenaline junkies in the Air Force, and that's what this is. It's pure adrenaline. You know, around those planes and helicopters and some of the stuff we do, especially our Special Forces guys, you know, those guys are out doing buggies and dirt bikes, doing their business overseas, and it's an adrenaline rush. That's what they're here for, and that's what they want to do, and that's exactly what this sport is. It's something exciting, fun. They love to do it. They're doing it for the fans, and just like we're doing it for America. It's something very similar, and I think it's a great thing that we're out here supporting them, and your guys are here supporting us.
Drifting is a lot different than any other motorsport in the fact that it's really all on you. You know, it's kind of similar to time attack. You know, it's you, the car, and the track. Even in a tandem battle, it's still you. Like, sure, you have to follow the person's line in front of you and, you know, mimic everything they're doing, but it's still all on you. Palm Beach was a rad event. We are only 2 hours away, so we jumped in the rig Thursday morning. Practice was at 3 o'clock, I believe. So we just kind of rolled up, unloaded the rig, and got the car ready to go out on the track all in the same day. So we got tons of sleep. We came in fresh and ready to go for practice. Practice went really well. They had an A and a B track. We were driving them both ways to try to figure out which one was better for the spectators, drivers, and tandem. So we wound up going with the A track, which had a fast entry speed on a right kink to a left with an outer clip, and then it went into a S turn that was on and off camber throughout the track. A little tricky to figure out. We also added a giant wing to the car, which helps the car stay at full lock without spinning. So that was also something we were getting used to because the car was understeering a little and we had to add some front grip. But overall, the practice session went really, really well, and we got ready for qualifying. For qualifying, we rolled up and took our first lap. I left the line, pretty much went flat down the entire straightaway, threw the car in, had pretty good angle, but I was running my midline to be safe. Went out to the outer clip, got close there, and powered through the rest of the center of the track. We were a little off power on the inside, trying to spool up the turbo, but it ended up being a pretty solid first run. I think it was a 77, which put us in 20th place. Shortly after, we went into our second run, and it started raining as soon as we were pulled up to the line. So Formula D held me and figured out the situation if they were going to put us on the rain line or the dry line. They decided they were going to put us back on the dry line. So the track was supposedly dry, left the line, felt good down the straightaway. As soon as I initiated, the track was super loose. So apparently it was still a little bit wet. I did get to ride my wide line through the first turn, but going into the second turn where the outer clip zone, I couldn't stop the car fast enough and went and hit the outer clip zone, which pretty much tossed the run out. We had to use our first run for a qualifying score. We qualified 20th, and that put us up against Tony Angelo. He was a judge last year, so he definitely knows how to drive and what the judges are looking for. We pulled up to the line. He led first. I followed. I followed him close down the straightaway and was able to stay about a car length back and get a little bit closer throughout the track at key points where the judges said they wanted to see the cars as close as possible. Then it was my turn to lead. I left the grid as fast as possible, put about a car length and a half on him, and left him back about a car and a half the entire time. Put on as much smoke as possible, drove with as much angle, and stayed as close to the clips as I could. He went up shallow a few times, which definitely gave me the advantage and the win. Our next battle for top 16 was with Rowdy. I'd driven with him a bunch in XDC over the past few years, so I knew his line, I knew his driving style, so I was pretty stoked to get to drive against him in the top 16. He's definitely a consistent, smooth driver and definitely follows one of the same lines almost every time. We pulled up to the grid. It was his turn to lead first. He led, and I stayed within a car length the entire track and actually came within inches of him in a few different spots. So we definitely drove super aggressive. Our hand-cooked tires had a ton of grip, so we were able to drive into the side of him pretty much the entire lap, give him a little bit of room for transition, and then just go flat all the way out the exit. On our lead run, I was able to drive the qualifying line that the judges wanted to see and put up a good amount of smoke, and he actually had to go shallow in a few spots to keep up, so we definitely had the advantage, and we wound up winning the battle. Our top 8 battle was at Daigo Saito. We came here equipped with the wing to take down Saito, so we were ready to go. Pull up to the line. He led first. I followed behind him extremely close down the straightaway. He was a little bit faster in qualifying speed, so we knew we had to go a little bit shallower and a little bit less angle to keep with him in the first turn, and we did that great. Transitioned inches from his bumper, so close that I literally squinched up in the car because I thought we were going to hit. Transitioned, and he got on the brakes a little bit earlier than we had noted, so he was slowing down for the clip. The track was also a little bit different, so I'm not saying that he brake checked me at all or anything. I had to get on the brakes as well. My car wasn't slowing down fast enough. We had a ton of angle, and I knew that we were going to hit, so I lifted back off the gas, flat back on the throttle to try to save it. We bumped a few times, my car jumped in the air, wound up blowing out a tire, but I still stayed flat in it to try to save it because I saw that he went off track, and I figured that was my chance to kind of take him out and win. So I tried to stay on the gas to finish the track, and the car just wasn't having it. We had about 6 inches of toe in, and we had no front right tire, and I had no ability to basically get around the track. So we were sitting there on the track waiting for the flatbed to come. It got there, we hooked the tow strap, pulled it onto the trailer, drove it back to the pits. During that time, I was trying to look out the back window to scope out what was wrong with the car so we could be ready for the 5 minutes. We get back to the pits. I got the team's tools and everybody ready to go on it. I had explained a few things that I knew was wrong with it. It was a tire, we needed to put a new wheel on, a new tie rod, and we didn't know if there was a control arm bent or the frame was bent or we were having any suspension problems, so it was going to be a gnarly 5 minutes. As soon as the car touched the ground, we jacked the car up, pulled the wheel off, saw the tie rod was destroyed. So I ran over to Chris Forsberg's team, and Brian lent me a big hammer, so we started hammering on it. I couldn't get it straight, so David grabbed the hammer, started hammering on it. We got it pretty much, the tie rod looking straight, put a rear wheel on the front because we didn't have another front spare wheel within the 5 minutes. Tighten the wheel down, put the car on the ground with about a minute to spare, and the car had 5 inches of toe in still. So, we took that extra minute to try to hammer it straighter and still adjust the tie rod and try to get it fixed. But, we still had a good amount of toe in, and I was totally down to drive it, but Formula D said it would have been unsafe, which I definitely agree that they made a good call because I definitely would have crashed into the crowd. So it would have been bad news bears. So, we're going to get the car fixed and ready to go and show up in New Jersey and kick some ass. So in Formula D, you kind of have to set your car up to be as fast as physically possible, even if that kind of makes it unsafe to drive. Like, my car has so much rear grip that after 70 miles an hour, there's like no front steering feel at all. So you pretty much have to be ready to crash and lose your car at like any time.
Philadelphia. Yo, welcome to the home of brotherly love.
On the way up to Formula D Wall, New Jersey, we stopped in Philadelphia, which is actually where I'm from. It's my hometown. So it was cool to have a bunch of old friends help prep the car and get it ready in Philly. And then shortly after, we had some of my homies wash up the car and give it a full detail. And then we rolled out to the track.
So we gotta kill him every summer, walk a little tougher, guns busting.
On Thursday, Formula D had their paid practice, so it gave us 4 hours to pretty much dial in the car with a real solid amount of grip and smoke and power. Wall, New Jersey has a really difficult track. It's a big bank with a lot of angle to it, and then it's actually really slow. So we enter at about 55 to 60 miles per hour, and it's our job to stay on the bank as close to the wall as possible. Then there's a huge, violent transition going into the infield with an inner clip, 2 infield half ovals. So it's kind of an interesting track, a little bit different. I hadn't had a setup for it yet with this car, so you know, we left Thursday practice riding the wall, doing really well, so we're pretty stoked. In qualifying, it had just started to drizzle. The track wasn't going to offer as much grip as it had earlier in the day, and also it was going to rain harder. So we knew we had to put down our 100-point run now instead of saving the more ballsy run for the second lap. I left the line and went flat into the first turn, initiated a little bit lower than normal, and then rode up the bank, stayed about 1.5 feet from the bank all the way to the outer clip, and then just did a huge amount of angle, transition, and stayed basically full lock throughout the rest of the track in the infield. I hit all the clips and made a good run, and they gave me a 91.5, which was good enough at that time to be first place qualifier. As we were getting ready to pull up to the line for my second qualifying run, we had taken notes that the track was extremely wet, slippery, and also had puddles throughout some spots in the track. We had decided as a team that it would be best to sit the lap out and see where we fell in the qualifying. At the end of qualifying, we ended up 5th, which was our best qualifying of the year.
I'm a no good sinner, ain't been to church in a minute. Next time I go, I might be front row with my suit tailor fitted. Bet they put push up in my casket, out the most was and swishes. My soul won't rest until my niggas smoke the bitches that did it on any given day. We gon' be everything on a pistol play. Looking for a nigga with some bricks to weigh. Put a bullet in and we can split the gate. Gotta be a runner when the lick come through. Put him in his crib, what his click gon' do. Show up at the door with the mask on, and if his family home, then we gon' kill him.
Our top 32 battle was against Tony Angelo, so I was pretty stoked to get to drive with him again. We drove well at PBIR, and it was like a rematch. So we pulled up to the line, and on my lead run, I ran a pretty solid line. Didn't have as much angle as I'd like, but it was fast, had a lot of smoke, and it hit all the clips where it needed to be. Then it was my turn to follow. On the follow run, I left the line, stayed extremely close to him, coming through the transition off the bank. Left him a little bit of a gap on the infield and then closed it again to show the judges that I had the upper hand, and we wound up taking the win.
I've been rapping for about 17 years, okay? I don't write my stuff anymore. I just kick it from my head, you know what I'm saying? I can do that. No disrespect, but that's how I am.
Top 16, we had Tyler McQuarrie in the GoPro Camaro. We left the line and I stayed flat down the straightaway, initiated into the bank, and didn't quite have as much angle as I would have liked, so I steered in for a little bit more angle, stayed against the wall all the way around. Tyler got close to me on the first inner bank. I transitioned and stretched him by about 3 or 4 cars going into the last turn and pretty much stayed ahead of him for the rest of the run.
Hands, everybody, if you got what it takes. Cause I'm Curtis Blow, and I want you to know that these are the breaks. Brakes on a bus, brakes on a car, brakes to make you a superstar, brakes to win and brakes to lose. But these here brakes will rock your shoes, and these are the breaks. Break it up, break it up, break it up.
On my following run, he left and he does this crazy initiation that I was actually kind of jealous of because it's like a huge choku flick with big angle. So we were trying to figure it out in practice and I couldn't do it. So I drove in behind him and left a little bit of space, knowing that he was going to do the transition. He transitioned but entered real low on the bank, so I also stayed low to gain on him. And about 3/4 of the way through the turn, I noticed that there was no way he was going to pull it off and he was definitely going to smash into the wall. But I was already coming in probably 5 miles an hour faster than him, so I put the car at more angle to try to push myself down the bank. When I did that, I realized that he had already smashed the bank and was starting to come back down, so I steered towards the wall to not smash directly into him. And when I did so, the back of my car hit, and then the front came around and smashed into the back of his Camaro. We actually went underneath his car, and my front bumper went all the way to the diff, so it was pretty crazy. I probably made impact at about 55 miles an hour and then hit his car going about 40. When I hit the wall, I had to stay flat to try to not bring the nose in, but after I'd hit him, it put me directly into the wall anyway, so we smashed the front and the rear of the car. So as I'm waiting to get my car picked up from the tow truck, I hear over the radio that they give Tyler McQuarrie the win. Initially, I was pretty pissed off about that because I pretty much had nowhere to go and I chose the wall instead of smashing into the other driver. Reviewing all the video, it looks like if I would have smashed him instead of the wall, I probably would have pushed him over the K-rail, causing him to hit the cameramen that were there and maybe both of us rolling over. So I definitely think I made the right decision. I understand that the judges have to decide a winner. I also understand that his car was rolling and moving and mine had no chance to even be ready for the next battle. So, you know, the show must go on, or, you know, I don't really know where the call was, but the judges had made the decision that I was going to hit the wall regardless of how his line was, so they treated it as two separate incidents. And because in my first run I made a small correction going into the first turn, they deemed him the winner. Even though he made a few mistakes following me and I had pulled away from him on the last turn where they wanted a close proximity, you know, the judges made the call, and that's kind of what we got to live with. So on Sunday after the event, we loaded the car up. It took a few hours to get it into the trailer because it was so smashed, but we got it strapped down and took the long drive back down to Orlando and unloaded the car Monday morning, put it on the lift, and noticed that the subframe had been pushed a few inches and we had a lot of damage to the front and rear of the car. So we kind of just, you know, we have a few ideas on what we're going to do to get everything ready for Seattle, and we're sitting top 16 in the points chase right now in the rookie season, so I'm super stoked about that. So we're absolutely going to be in Seattle. We're absolutely going to bring a more powerful, stronger, better car there, and be sure to check it out. After our crash in New Jersey, we had a couple options on what to do, and we decided that the best way to get this done in time was to build a new car. We unloaded the car off the trailer and then immediately started on the E46, stripping down the car, pulling all the doors and sound deadening and all of the front end to get the car basically down to a bare shell as quickly as possible. We loaded up the car onto the trailer to take to Chris Leone Motorsports. He does a lot of the SCCA and NASA cars and a lot of Grand Am chassis as well, so he does a lot of good, solid, safe cages. On day 6, we had already had the engine out of the car of the E36. We were working non-stop to strip all the safety equipment and parts we were going to use off of the E36 to put into the new car. Chris had dropped off the car with the new cage done already.
Well, the wreck was really bad between Chelsea and Tyler, and money's kind of tight right now, so I know Chelsea really likes flat black wheels and specifically bolts. So we're trying to just, you know, do the best we can do with what we have right now. So we're here just patching this up for Seattle.
My name's Andrew Grafton. My main part of this build is doing all the fabrication. Anything custom metalwork that needs to be done, I take care of that. plus handle some of the wrenching and, I mean, basically do a little bit of everything.
Day 8, we were starting to do all the wiring on the car and put the fire suppression system in, the gauges, and we were kind of coming up with the game plan on how exactly we were going to build this car. I know it's kind of like, you know, a 10-day left in the build, but at this point we were actually getting into working on the E46.
Centrifugal force pulling me off course in a horse race, changing horses midstream, 14th place. On videotape, surveillance playback, saw you lose face, disgrace, God forbid you fall off of the face of the earth to chase the black hole of what you thought it was worth today.
Don't shoot the piano player.
I heard them say it was your fault, centrifugal force, you got caught, convict, monotonous, a verdict thoughtless as you read it out loud. At least I was being relatively honest. Standing in your office trying to speak to some anacondas, eking solace from the sawdust while your doppelganger stands topless. No one notices they got their own dramas. Drama-ramas, melodramas.
You draw commas on the eyes of Madonnas
and wonder why you can't turn traumas into nirvana.
Get to the chopper!
My name is David Hugh. I'm the lead technician for the BC Racing team. Since we've started the new build, my daily routine has been drastically different. We're here till 3-4 a.m. every night, and then we're right back in the morning. And since this is a shop dedicated to performance BMW work, I mean, we do have daily stuff we need to take care of as well, other customers. So whenever there's a free chance, we're on Chelsea's chassis, and then once business hours are over, for the next 8 hours or so, it's all, you know, getting the car done, getting it ready to go. Our eating schedule, sleeping schedule, everything's been off. We don't have time to do anything else. And I did anticipate the car being further along than it is, but that's car life. I mean, everything is unexpected, and when it happens, you just deal with it.
Talk with anacondas, at least I'm being honest. I'm trying to turn these Kiki Palmers into baby mamas.
That's dope. Late ass nights come from long days, doing all the right things in the wrong ways, doing all the wrong shit for the right reasons, sprinkling midnight game, call it night seasoning. Haters get salty, give them cholesterol. Trill OG, mop up the floor with the best of y'all. Then dry that bitch off with the rest of y'all and catch a flight to Rio de Janeiro for La Festival. Yeah, and it's word to fit a paldy. Ball hard like a cement inside of my Spalding. And now break your face with a no-look pass. Now back to your parking lot pimp with your little hook gas. I use harsh words cause these are hard times. And trill ass people, nowadays it's such a hard find. So it's one eye open if I can peep them, and one on the scope when they frontin' so I can sleep them. Man, my flow is so parabolic, the energy will blow you over even if you brolic. God damn it, now that's one for the Googlers who fell asleep on their desk and never stepped their noodle up. Taking lames out, never been new to us. The hardest part of shit is figuring which of you the bust. Now step your weight up like GNC, and RIP to Chris Luda reppin' CNC. Straight G.
Hey, Kevin Lawrence. Been the spotter for Chelsea Denofa. I've been helping get the car built in the last 20 days. The craziest parts of the build was probably, I mean, overall just the time frame. It's a very short amount of time to build a whole car from ground up. But, you know, we've got everything pretty much buttoned up. We just need to do a little bit of vinyl, tie up a little loose ends, and it's ready to go.
On day 16, we were really getting down to the wire, and we drove down to Miami to go to Active Auto Work. They were the guys who were going to be tuning and setting up the car to make as much power and torque as possible. So we strapped the car down on the dyno, hooked the fans up, and started making pulls. We were starting from a complete base tune here, so we were trying to figure out exactly what needed to be done, the timing map, the fuel map. Active did a great job within a few hours. We're making full pulls on the dyno and getting everything set up as far as boost pressure. With the new cams in, we made a ton more low-end power. We were seeing large amounts of boost below 3,200 RPM, which is exactly what we were looking for before. We were also could get a little bit more ballsy with the tune, because they were totally down to make as much power as possible. On day 18, we pretty much had come close to finishing the entire car, and we were having Steve from Carbon Wrap to do all the vinyl wrapping of the vehicle. The car was already black, so it was a lot less work than last year's car, but there's still a lot of sponsors, decals, and a lot of different things we had to do to set the car up, so it was another 24-hour day. Here we are on day 21 after a 3,200-mile road trip. We made it. The car's in one piece. It didn't fall off the top of the trailer or anything, and it's cleaned up and ready to go. It's definitely awesome to have a team and sponsors that are willing to help and get a car done that quickly. There was a lot of overnight shipping and driving 500 miles to pick up parts that were needed, and even people that had running and driving cars that lent me parts out of their car to get it done, to have it here. We also had a ton of fans that bought our Support the Hustle t-shirts that helped us out with all the funding and helped us get this car, all those extra little pieces to have it done. And I really appreciate that for everyone, and I can't wait to get out there and kick some ass.
I don't really like flowers, but they like me.
Going into round 5 of Formula D, there was a lot of change. We started building the E46, and about 3/4 of the way through that, I signed a deal with Bergenholtz Racing to drive their Mazda RX-8. So it's been a lot of change, and going into Seattle, I just wanted to do the best I could and prove to everybody that it was all worth it. I think most drivers out there have been pushing to try to get that arrive and drive, oh, so-and-so got a ride, this so-and-so's in this car. Like, it's one of those things where you push so hard and you run your own team and you run your own, basically it's a business, and non-stop you try to progress it. And then if you get an offering to go, drive a car where all of that's handled and you can just concentrate on your actual driving ability and the setup of the car, and then your own little marketing thing on the side, it's one of those things it's easier. It seems like you can progress your driving ability better, and it's a lot less stress on my end. Like, we've been doing this for 9 years, pushing nonstop, running a team. Like I've been basically doing it on my own with the help of a crew the entire time, so it's a lot easier to go with this team and drive for them, and it allows me to concentrate more on my driving ability. The Bergenholtz racing team is a bunch of cool guys. Ron is a little bit, out of control, but he's definitely just crazy passionate about the sport. Everything he does, he's so excited about, and he loves the progression, and we kind of have that same mentality of like, let's get this sport to the next level. Let's try to, make the car faster. Let's change this. Let's try this. It didn't work. It worked. Okay. And they have tons of data logging material so that they can prove all of those concepts that I've come up with. And I think that worked. Like it felt faster. Now we know it's faster. Derek is the suspension guy. He pretty much does all the setup on the car. I'll tell him what it's doing and he can fix it and make it better or worse, or we can, dial in things, and the two of us can work together to kind of tighten the car up and make it exactly what I feel works and a little bit of what, they know works. Ed is like the technology nerd. He's the guy who plugs the computer in and reads all of our fancy Motec stuff that I don't really understand. I'm still learning, but it's pretty cool. We'll sit and watch all the runs afterwards and pull up the data logging and see exactly what I'm doing. Like, oh, I think I pedaled the gas there. Well, you did. You went down to 40% throttle. Or, oh, I was riding the wall there. Yeah, you were 2 inches into the wall because they have a proximity sensor on the back of the car. So it's more of a refined motorsports team instead of me just saying that was faster, that was rad, that was cool. Now we have hard data, so I can still have the rad and cool, but have hard data to back it up. So it's good, and I think that moving to this team will help progress myself and the team that I brought over to Bergenholtz Racing from BC Racing's team. Comparing the RX-8 to the E36 is like comparing apples to apples. They're very similar. The wheelbase is almost the same. The steering angle is almost the same. The power is almost the same. The main difference is just how the previous driver had it set up in comparison to mine. And the car is much more refined than my E36. It has a lot of technology and data logging. It also has, different suspension setups, different control arm styles. In the rear, it has a 4 or 5 link rear suspension versus trailing arm with the E36. So finding the forward bite in comparison to the E36 is more difficult. The car has a lot more front bite and a little less rear bite than my car did. So we're kind of setting it up to switch that around to get more rear bite and have the front a little bit, less sensitive to steering. Has just as much angle, has big wings, so it has good downforce in the rear. Mainly the big difference is just the torque. It has about 200 pound-feet of torque less than my E36 had, but the power band is 2,000 RPM bigger, so it has much more usable power band. It just doesn't explode the tires as quickly as my car did. But we're working on changing some stuff. We're going to hopefully have a real solid setup going into Seattle, and I'm pretty stoked to drive it. The E46 is a super solid car. It's about 100% stiffer than the E36. There's a little bit more attention to detail. Even though we had the build in 18 days, we had a lot of people working on it, a lot of people pushing real hard to make sure it was done right and to be competitive. And I think with just about another day's worth of work and an alignment and a couple days of testing and setting up, it'll be ready for the XDC Dallas event. We also plan on driving some other events, like maybe All-Star Bash in the West Coast. The car will be at SEMA. And we'll get to drive some other events before the season's over with it to dial it in. Our Bergenholtz deal is signed for this year. We don't have a deal next year yet. That's definitely a possibility, but I want to make sure the E46 is competitive and ready to drop into FT next year, depending on the circumstance. Although the E36 was definitely more aggressive looking, I'm definitely a big E36 fan. I wanted to progress to the E46, mainly because I have a lot of sponsors that wanted a newer car. I kind of wanted to build a newer, stiffer chassis. Like I said, I like the E36 the way it looks. The E46 is not as cool looking yet, but we're going to add some stuff to make the exterior look a lot more aggressive and kind of fit more like the E36 did. The E46 makes about 600 horsepower and 600 torque. power band is larger than the E36, so we'll make more power down low. We did wind up using the same front steering and everything from the E36. So it has the Sean Love control arms, the E36 spindles and shocks. And we kind of just took parts from the E36 that were the best and the best parts from the E46 and combined them together to make like the ultimate car that was, you know, easy to drive at big angle, makes lots of smoke, and has tons of rear grip. And that's, you know, the key points to drift. We had no idea that we were signing with the Bergenholtz team at the beginning of the season. We still had cars that we needed to transport for Matt Field and Jeff Abbott, as well as needing to transport my E46. So we left from Orlando on Saturday morning really early, drove all the way out to the event in Seattle. It was like 3,500 miles of seeing America. Crazy long trip. Hachi and I drove the entire way non-stop and made it. Prior to arriving to the track on Wednesday, we kind of went over a game plan on how we were going to introduce our team to Bergenholtz and make it as smooth of an operation and transition as possible. On Wednesday, we arrived at the track for a test day, so we got in the car, we switched the seat around to put my seat in the RX-8. We also finished some last-minute things on the E46 and got the RX-8 ready to test.
Who we signed to, how they find you, or you gon' fall off, let me just remind you that these aren't the things you need to know. These aren't the things you need to know. What's he wearing, what's he driving?
Seattle is a pretty rad track. It's an oval track, so I'm pretty used to driving those. I kind of started drifting on oval tracks in South Florida and Orlando. So it's definitely, I'm used to riding the wall, I'm not afraid of it, and that's the main key to this track. So you'll drive down the first straightaway and go about 85 to 90 miles an hour, clutch kick into the first turn. A lot of people were hand braking as well, but the car was set up well with the clutch kick. You initiate and you kind of just watch that top dotted line, and you want to put your front right tire on the dotted line. If you do that and you can hold like 35 or 40 degrees of angle, you'll literally be rubbing the bumper all the way around the entire track. Once you get to the outer clip, you'll have to use like the foot brake and handbrake to slow down to go into the power alley. You'll hit an outer clip on the left-hand side. As soon as you hit that clip, I'm in third, downshift, flat, straight through the power alley, transitioning on the wall. And this year they added a wall that actually went around the whole second turn. So you could flick it in, latch onto the wall, and ride it all the way around the whole outer clipping zone. As soon as you get to the end, there's actually a K-rail that's a little bit more kinked, and the car will bump it, and you'll know to basically just power on and shoot through the last few turns. The judges wanted late apexes on both of those clipping points, so you're going to power through it, then transition and power through the last one. The last turn's also on another wall, so you can tap that wall and kind of power through. Every turn on the entire track, you can be riding the wall, so it's a super aggressive track, and it definitely shows who has balls out there. Going into the Formula D practice day on Thursday, we had a few adjustments that were made, one of which was raising the rev limiter slightly so that I could use more tire speed on the bank to actually ride all the way around and stay on the wall without bumping the rev limiter and having the car dive down. It's one of those things, again, like the electronics in this car is crazy. We pull the data log and you see, hey, we're capped out on RPM here the whole way. So that means you can't pedal the throttle to stay up and down on the bank. So we changed that, went on the practice day, first run, rode the wall all the way around. It was like, wow, like 300 RPM or 400 RPM really like made that difference. We also adjusted the rear suspension and did a little bit of tire pressure relief to kind of get as much grip out of the rear as possible. Again, I'm still kind of learning the car at this point, so you know, we're pulling out front grip, adding rear grip, and adjusting some suspension settings as well to get that perfect qualifying pass.
Amazing Deja, Deja, hazy ways, my blazing arrow. The race that range from Asia way to Rio de Janeiro. Afraid you brave, but look, today's the day that in the major way I make you say, oh look, you save the day and also pave the way. Rubbing my just like razor blades today and days away from now on.
Going into qualifying, Bergenholtz had set up the car to be really, really competitive, and it really left it in my hands to just drive the car and my ability to, you know, get used to this car. And this was the crunch time. This is where all of these last few days of testing and prepping, it all kind of came down to, this is where the first time you're going to drive this car is going to matter. So I left the line and went to put down just a solid, like, you know, top 20 run to try to get 80 points. So I initiated on the straightaway at like 84, 85 miles an hour, rode the wall, but I left like 2 feet of room all the way around the wall. Lit up the outer clip, went through the power alley, hit the speed, we got the speed points, then transition, went into the infield, rode the wall like 2 feet again, leaving a little bit of room, and then powered through the last 2 clips and got close to the outer wall on the way out. On the second run, I went in, I knew I needed to better my first score, which was a 78. I needed to, you know, get a 95 or go out there and get the 100-point run. So I drove down a straightaway, initiated, I rode the wall, got really close, actually almost tapped it at a few spots, came through the clip, lit it up, went through the power alley, big angle, flicked it into the wall, rode the wall in the power alley for about 30 feet. And when I went to power out of the power alley, I actually pushed the car and it understeered slightly, and I flicked the car back for the last turn. So I had an on-power straightening, so I kind of, you know, wrote that lap off. Even though we rode the wall and had a really good run, we were on throttle while the front wheels were straight, so I definitely can see a poor score there. So we ended up qualifying 25th off of our first run, which was a score of 78, and you know, the spread between 32nd and first place was only like 25 points, so this was like one of the closest qualifying rounds like in Formula D history. After qualifying 25th, we went into the tandem practice. I was really, really happy to go out for tandem practice with this car. It's one of those things where that's one of my stronger ends. Like, I can qualify well, but you know, my driving ability in tandem I feel is my stronger suit. So I wanted to see how this car reacted against people that were trying in tandem. We were able to stay really close to a lot of the top guys, you know, whether they were pedaling it because it was practice or not, I don't know, but we were able to stay on Reese. We had a couple runs with JR where I was, you know, right on him, having the left foot brake on the bank, so we knew the car was competitive. It was a big relief off my shoulder, knowing that, you know, and the team's shoulder, knowing that the car is fast, it's competitive, and it was really just in my hands to just drive the car and win that way. On our like third lap out, again, like since I'm learning this car, the G-Force transmission uses a different shifting setup than my BMW and previous cars. So going into the infield, I downshifted into second and wound up breaking the dog gear in the transmission. So I drove it back to the pits and pulled in, and immediately Ron had the car in the air. He was underneath it, and I think the transmission was out before I had my suit off and my shorts back on. Like within 10 minutes it was out. He started pulling, replacing all the parts that needed to be replaced. It wasn't a major failure, but it's, again, we're learning the car. I'm learning the driving ability and the style of the car. So, you know, we replaced the dog gear, put it in, and got ready for main day.
Who got the key to my baby? Jack move, that's how we act when we team up. Throw your triple beamer. This is fish scale. I bells out the county, counterfeit bills. My slang be high range, brick city. Watch how you switch, son, I'm highly octane. All you hear is bang, 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 bang. Remember you bitch shit, I forget my
We pulled to the line with Walker, and it was his turn to lead first, so I knew that on my following run I had to stay as close as possible. He initiated in the first turn using a handbrake, so I left about 2 car lengths for my clutch kick to put me right up on his door. I was able to stay about a car length behind the entire bank, and then going into the outer clipping zone in the first turn, he did a handbrake to like get himself closer to the wall. So I did the handbrake and downshifted, and I got back on power when he did, but then he made another adjustment that brought him up the wall again. So I started diving in on the inside. So because of that, I steered in and kind of had a bobble, and then got right back on his door for the next transition, and then finished the rest of the run pretty much only giving him room to transition and go through the last turn. So it was a good run. I did have a little bobble. Again, I'm trying to learn this car, so like when I get put in different situations, it's tough to know exactly what the car is going to do. That's just seat time that's going to help that. And then so I went into my lead run, and I knew that I was a little bit faster into the first turn, so I gave him a good pace to the pace cone. We were door to door at the cone, and he was flat, so it was a perfect takeoff. I shifted the fourth, pulled ahead, and initiated. I had about a car length on initiation, and then towards the end of the turn, towards the bank, like the outer clip, I had like 5 or 6 car lengths on him, so I pulled him big time on the bank with good angle, good speed. I came into the power alley on the yellow line, transitioned, rode the wall all the way around the bank again on the inside, rode the wall, and then I transitioned into the last 2 turns and did a pretty solid run. Coming out of the outer clipping point, I did have another small bobble going into the power alley, but I was able to power through and put a ton of angle in the car and make some good smoke throughout the rest of the lap. They actually wound up giving Walker the win because of the bobble I had during the follow run. So even though I stretched a big gap on him in the lead run and hit all the walls and clips and definitely got a little wild, they gave him the win. Overall, I'm pretty stoked on the event. We ended up top 32 on a car that I basically had never driven before with a new team, and I think that overall, I think we got a good thing going. I think going into Vegas, we have the car set up, and we took the problems that we had for this event, and the Bergenholtz and the team kind of worked together to come up with an answer for those issues and to build and set up some new things for the car to kind of fit my driving style a little bit more and make it easier for me to drive the car. A lot of it is still on my end, learning and driving the car, so we're definitely going to try to get another test day in before Vegas and try to go out there and just kick some ass. I mean, that's pretty much why we're here. I still gotta get that podium this year.
The shaky drove his Cadillac. He went cruising down the hill. The prison was standing on the radiator grill. Shawty don't like it. Rock the Casbah, rock the Casbah. Shawty don't like it. Rock the Casbah.
Since I was like 5 years old, I've been like heavily involved in extreme sports, whether it was skateboarding or BMX or wakeboarding or mountain biking or, all those sports where like you're on the edge all the time, 100%, you can't go 80% when you're going down a huge roll-in for a 50-foot double. Like, you just can't. You have to stay committed. Since I've lived my entire life like that, I kind of brought that into drifting, you know? Like, when we're out in practice and stuff, I still go like almost 100% every lap, you know? I'm a little bit safer, but because I want to get further into the round, but I keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Vegas is a pretty wild event. I've actually never driven the track. They actually changed the track a bunch too, so you know we were going into it a little bit blind on setup. We had a couple ideas and changes from Seattle. I was just stoked to drive, really. Like, Seattle was like that, oh man, this is my first event thing, and now it's like, I'm ready to get in this car and just kill it. Like, that was my mentality. And it's kind of a neat event because it's at night. That sucks for me because I can't see anything at night. I'm not a very good night driver, but I'm adapting and getting better, and all the practice sessions were at night as well, so you know, it kind of helped out there. And we were just stoked to get out and drive the car, and you know, we made a few changes to the car. We put some driveline donuts in and changed a few things up, and you know, the whole team is now like, we're all working together really, really tight, and you know, we're each getting each thing that we need to get done before each round and before each run, and it's all just becoming a really nice, like, enjoyable race weekend. The Vegas track was tight. It was a pretty short run-up, but we were able to get to like between 72 and 75 miles an hour. It was a clutch kick, flat initiation, through a left sweeper to a right-hander, and there was like a little pocket area that the judges wanted you to go into. And then there was an outer clip during the practice day that was all the way around the entire wall, and the wall was kind of shaped funny, so it was real difficult to stay on the wall like when it was like an 8-bit design, like all the way around. So they changed that up a little bit and made it so it was 2 separate outer clipping zones. It really freed up the drivers to stay on the gas longer and not have to handbrake as much. Coming out of that turn, you'll go straight, flat, inside to an inner clip, quick, snappy transition to a left inner clip, and then a last inner clip on the right, and it was finishing against the wall. And if you timed it right, you could really flick the car and just stay flat for the last 2 turns completely, and use the angle to slow the car down and make tons of smoke. So it was actually a really nice track. I liked it. It tested how everybody could transition quickly, and it pushed you to try to ride a wall that you were driving straight at like 80 miles an hour. So I definitely like that.
Zaga zaga, zaga now. Yeah, sing it, yo. Let's do this. One red palm fruit against wall. These 6 them marching, them call me. I'm the girls and sugar, that's all. Welcome the king of the dance.
On Thursday, we had our practice day with Formula D. It was kind of a rough practice day. We were finding that we couldn't get the gearing right, and we were trying to mess around with the power band a little bit, but by the end of the day, we had it pretty solid. It was just, first 10 laps were definitely like, hey, do I do 3rd, do I do 4th? Hey, Ed, pull the data. Was it faster in 3rd, or was it faster in 4th? Like, I'm having to clutch kick it and beat the hell out of the driveline in 4th. 3rd, we can just rev it a little bit higher, so we ended up at the end of the day with a good setup that was tight, fast, high revving, flames coming out of the car and stuff, so we were pretty stoked on that. So Friday was the qualifying day. There was another quick practice session beforehand where we had a couple ideas that we had talked about the night before. We implemented them onto the car and then went out for practice. The car felt super solid. Like, you know, I was getting to the point where I could stay flat for a long time and just use the steering and the clutch to keep the car exactly where I wanted in the revs, which it's tough. Like it's tough to find that, and by the second event, being able to do that, I feel great. Like I came back to the pits like super stoked after practice, ready for qualifying. So we went out for our first qualifying run, and it was a pretty solid run, but we hit the inner clip on the first turn, and just launched it like 100 feet into the crowd. So even though the run was like maybe an 85 or so, we ended up hitting that clip, which they docked like 12 or 15 points for. On the second run, we went out and I did a similar run, a little bit more on throttle and one more gear change, and it ended up being really well. We missed the first clip, we did it good, we were right on it. The outer zones we were like 2 feet off of. I think we lit up a couple of them. Lit up both the inner clips and finished the run flat on the gas, rolling cold. So I was pretty stoked, and we ended up qualifying 10th. And our first tandem battle was against Ian Forner.
Mad liberator, death operator, rock the data, amazing flavor. Yo, the way I feel. Sometimes it's too hard to sit still. Things are so passionate, time to show real. Sometimes I try to chill, mellow down, blow a smoke, smile.
Our first tandem battle was with Ian. He drives a R32 Skyline 4-door with like a supercharged V8 in it. It's tight, I like the car a lot. So it was my turn to lead first, and I pulled away from the light, and earlier we had kind of spoke about like, hey, you're 10 miles an hour faster than me, so let me jump the light a little bit so that when you're going we can kind of match up and have a good battle. And I'm all about having a tight battle, so you know, we let him get the light a little bit. I sped up in front of him, we initiated. It's nice and tight, like about a car back, and I steadily just rode a little bit wider of the line and pulled away from him throughout the track. Just slightly, not anything too crazy, but he was definitely there, and on the clips he was catching up pretty good, and then I'd pull him again, so he was diving in a little bit. So we switched it up, and then it was his turn to lead. So he got the jump, and I left a little bit of a gap, and then rocketed up to the side of him in the first turn, rode the outer clips, and he had a pretty solid line right in front of me, so it was easy to follow and stay as close as possible. And then the last turn, I got real up in his door, right on the wall, and we finished the run. They actually wound up giving me the win, so I was stoked on that, and we moved on to the next battle. So every Formula D team, like when they qualify, they look at the tree and they line up exactly who they're gonna, you know, match up with. And obviously, as soon as I qualified 10th, I immediately like was listening for, you know, who qualified in what places, because I can kind of figure out who I'm gonna have. And of course, in top 16, if I won and your boy Daigo Saito won, we were gonna match up together. So it was definitely, you know, gonna be crazy, and we knew that going into it. So we changed the car a little bit, set up, and got out to the track and lined up with Daigo, and you know, we were both super stoked. And I talked to Bridges, his team owner, earlier, and you know, he definitely said, it's like, Daigo's gonna go 100, like you don't have to worry about anything. Like, so I was like, cool, so we're gonna run heads up and we're gonna go 100%. Well, I went about 150% and left the line. At the pace cone, we were pretty even. You know, I was at his, you know, front tire to back tire, and he just took off. He was like so fast. I had like no idea what to do. So like, I initiated a little bit earlier to run a shallower line through the first turn to catch up. I was definitely catching up. He went through the speed alley at 74. The highest marked all weekend before that was like 68. So he was already like 6 miles an hour faster than anybody else. I came through 78. Well, we decided that 74 was as fast as we could go because I went right into the wall, full speed, the back left corner of the car. I closed the gap on him, got super close, hit the first wall, put the front end of the car into the wall a little bit. I just clutch kicked and stayed flat as fast as I could, so I pulled the front end back out again, and then that second wall, because the corner has a couple angles in it, that second wall just grabbed me through the front end of the car and super hard. So there was damage to the back left of the car and the front left of the car. Daigo, you know, had a couple scratches on his bumper from me riding the outer side wall and bumping him from behind. But it was crazy. Like, you know, there's nothing else I could do. I figured, you know what, if you're gonna if he's gonna pull you that hard going into the first turn, like, you have to catch up. If you don't catch up, then just shut the car off and go home. Like, there's no point. So, you know, I went as hard as I could to catch up, and after I bumped the first wall, all I did was aim at his big ass wing and just stay flat the entire time and try to pull out of it, and we almost did it, but that second wall just put us in. So after the crash, I jumped on the radio and just kind of quickly explained what was wrong with the car. I know we had 5 minutes to fix it. From looking at the car, I figured there was no way, but you know, Ron's pretty good, so I said, you know what, let's try it. So I radioed that the front suspension was broken, and the rear suspension and brake rotors, and I mean, it was pretty bad. So I got into the EMT, they brought me back to the pits, kind of checked me out, make sure I wasn't dead or anything, and Ron immediately jumped on the car, but we saw that the spindles were broken on the car and decided that there's no way we were going to be able to fix it in time. You know, like, that I can't knock on it, no way. Like, I crashed that car really bad. Like, you know, Ron and them were just concerned to see if I was okay. You know, I was fine. I was just ego bruised. Like, I cannot beat Daigo. Like, it just pisses me off that I cannot beat him. Like, for the last 2 battles with him, I haven't even finished the first run. Like, so it's like, kills me. I don't know what to do, but, you know, if we get matched up with him at Irwindale again, I'm definitely going to finish both runs. I don't know about winning, but my goal is to finish both runs and put on a good show for that.
Bro, what are you gonna do? Chelsea was saying if he doesn't have a body pillow at night, it's really banana with whoever's next to him. Unfortunately, that was Hachi. Boost!
So we're going into round 7 of Formula D at Irwindale Speedway. Just coming off a pretty bad wreck at round 6, Las Vegas. Almost lost a car. Bergenholtz worked real hard in the 3 to 4 weeks that were off between it, getting the car ready. Did a phenomenal job. So we're just kind of going into this event, just trying to push, trying to get on that podium, and you know, do the best we can. So we arrived at the track on Thursday to do Formula D's test day. We had a lot of new parts on the car. Basically the entire front and rear end had been completely redone. Suspension, arms, everything. Like, we broke quite a bit in Vegas. So we had new BC shocks, which I did some new valving in, and you know, we changed the spring rates around a little bit. And we were just kind of going out and taking it easy to make sure that, you know, everything that was done and everything that Bergenholtz had done in prep for it, you know, actually worked. And it worked flawlessly. We didn't really have any issues. We did a couple laps and we realized that we needed a gear change. We had also turned the power up, so now we're making somewhere around 700 to 750 wheel horsepower, which also brought the torque up. So there's quite a bit of change going on for this event. Nothing too major, just adding grip and horsepower so we could make the car faster overall.
As we enter, come never take it on the biggest adventure. Must be the venture that you never thought you could touch our credentials. What's the initials? You be Jam Rock, the lyrical official. Send out the order, laws and the rituals. Burn candles, say prayers, paint murals. It is truth, we big news, we hood heroes.
Irwindale's one of my favorite tracks. It's a big bank. It's full commitment. You know, you got to ride the walls all the way around. There's also like 15,000 people that show up to this event. There's press boxes on the top of the stadium, and you know, it's just a big, awesome, like wow event. You know, everybody you know goes there. All of my sponsors are like based out of Cali, pretty much. So everybody shows up. So for the track, you start off. First gear, the whole straightaway is on like a 3 or 4 degree banking. So it's tough because if you spin the tires, the back end tries to walk itself out. So you have to kind of set the car up and your driving style to go fast down the straightaway. We were having about an 80-mile-an-hour entry in 4th gear, clutch kick. And it's your job to ride the wall about 2 feet away from it the entire time. So you're pretty much just pedaling it and staying as much throttle as you can and slipping the clutch to keep yourself on the bank. The last, it's like 70 or 80 feet of the bank kind of tightens up in the radius, so it pushes you right out to the wall so you can get right on the outer clip and tap the wall. Right after you hit that, you immediately have to power through and transition to hit an inner clip on the start-finish line. Right after that, you do like a quick foot brake or maybe a quick hand brake and stay on the throttle as much as you can going into the inner bank. The inner bank has a little bit of an edge on it that you don't want to hit. If you hit that, you'll rip wheels off and get all kinds of crazy damage. So you kind of want to feather it around that and then latch onto the wall and ride it for as long as possible. This year they extended that section so you were able to stay on the gas flat for, you know, several seconds. Then you hit an inner clip on the left, short straightaway, and a long right-hand sweeper that finished the track off.
Hey bitch, do you really, really, really wanna go hard? Go in the crib, take a step on this credit card and take the car and do circles in the parking lot. Scream at the top of our lungs like la la la, la 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 la. We got that la 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 la. Bitch, I see you working at the mall at Forever 21 selling tees and shawls.
As we went into qualifying day, we were finding that all the added horsepower that we had, we turned the boost up on our Turbo by Garrett GTX turbo, and we were actually getting some heat soak in the car. So Ron, before qualifying, added another oil cooler that drastically helped. So we were able to stay in the throttle, not have any problems with the overheating just by adding another oil cooler. So we were ready for qualifying. On our first qualifying pass, I went out and it was just a crappy run. Like, there's those runs that you wish you just could take back. That was one of them. I was embarrassed by it. It was absolutely terrible. So we knew that we had to go out and kill it in the second run. Our first run we got a score of a 67, and we were immediately bumped out of 32. So when we went into the second qualifying run, I was pulling up to the grid. I could hear J-Rod over the announcement saying that like Chelsea was knocked out, you know, so he's no longer in the 32 and he has to qualify well. So, you know, just putting the pressure on, I left the line and put down like pretty much the best run I could, and rode the wall, tapped it on the bank, came into the inner bank, stayed close to the wall, and just smoked it out, like filled the whole second half of the track with Nitto smoke, just like crazy. I dropped a tire that was on the yellow line. It could have been off, it was very close, so the judges deducted slightly for being offline, but I got a score of an 88. So we were stoked, and that qualified us 8th place. So it was 8th place in car number 88 with a score of 88. So we were stoked.
Patiently wait since the West Coast fell off the streets. Been watching the West Coast never.
After qualifying, went into tandem practice. We were pretty stoked because we had added the grip with the BC coilovers. We had the tire pressures knocked in perfect. The car had tons of grip. It was super fast. And being the extra horsepower that we had now, it felt like unbeatable. So we went out for a couple tandem runs with like Reese and JR, and we were able to stay right on their door with pretty much everybody without any issues. So we were stoked going into Saturday, and we knew that we had a car that could easily win.
So round with that Nina. Ride with a hoe named Keisha, smoking on Keisha. My diamonds out for me, they say, how can I meet you? G5 out high in the sky, ho, I can't see you. Got a condo on my wrist, girl, I'm cashing out. Got a condo around my neck, girl, I'm cashing out. 36 hoes, so round with that Nina.
So Saturday morning we woke up, went to the track, dialed in a few more things that we had noticed over the day before, and went out for practice. Practice was tight. We went out and did a good job. We were having a little bit of trouble on the inner bank because the track had changed, but we knew it was going to get grip back in the track later on when it had cooled down. So, we adjusted a few things, and Ron and Derek and the rest of the team were all stoked. So we just got ready for the tandem battles. So our first tandem battle was with Pat Mordaunt, and he drives a SC300 on Yokohama tires, and it's a turbo V8. So we knew it was a pretty good car. It made lots of smoke, and he was driving with great line and good angle pretty much all day. So he pulled up to the line, and it was my time to lead first because I was a higher qualifier. I left the line and kind of gave him a little bit of a lead because his car was a little slower on the straightaway. Then we initiated, and immediately I pulled like 5 or 6 cars on him on the bank. I had a little bit of a shallower line, but I was still able to stay over the dashes like the judges wanted, and brought it up around the outer clip. Transitioning around the inner clip on the start-finish line, I stayed tight on it, got closer to the wall on the inner bank, keeping about a 6 or 7 car lead over him. And then transitioning into the last turn, I pulled a little bit further of a lead, and he even went shallow, so we knew our car was just immediately much faster than his car. On the follow run, we pulled up to the line. He left the line, I kind of stayed next to him until he initiated. I tossed it in, and I stayed about a half car to a car from the entire bank, like using the handbrake and foot brake to keep the car at speed and kind of stay where we needed to be. I had a little bit less angle, but it was mostly because I couldn't get on the gas at all because we were, gas, handbrake, foot brake, left foot brake, gas, like just trying to keep the car in drift behind him. And then when we transitioned off the bank, he kind of floated his car out wide, so I transitioned to the inside, and then I couldn't see all of a sudden that I was going to drive right into the inner clip on the track. So I tried to do a quick handbrake. Wasn't going to happen. I knew I was going to hit the clip, so I just tried to make it so only one tire went off track. I then again transitioned into the bank, drove right back up onto this door, and stayed about a half car for the rest of it. As soon as I transitioned on the last turn, I knew I needed to dart in on the inside, so I drove right into the inside, and I stayed about a foot from his car all the way. And then his car kind of either slowed down or got more angle, which caused him to slow down. I'm not saying it was a brake check or anything, but I wound up bumping the rear of his car with my car. And when I did that, it seemed like his car drastically slowed down. And I drove up his front wheel and literally did a wheelie in the car. And at that point, I couldn't even see in front of me. All I could see was I was almost looking down at him inside of his car, while I was doing the wheelie, flat on the gas. I kind of backpedaled it a little bit to bring the car off of him, and he had gone wide off the track. So there definitely was some good contact. It didn't knock him out of drift, but it did push him over the line on the last turn. So I think that I was definitely deemed fault for hitting him. But running over the clip, the judges had deemed that I was 2 tires off, which was automatic 0, which definitely gave us the lose. Kind of sucked. I was a little upset about it. I wanted to go all the way at this event. I think we were capable of it, but sometimes you make mistakes, and I definitely made a big one this time. So we finished the event, and I think we ended up 17th or 18th overall. We had good qualifying at 8th place, but at the end of the championship season, we ended up 17th place. it was definitely a personal goal of mine to make top 16 for the season, but you know, we know we're capable of it, and I'm not gonna, you know, make it too crazy. I definitely needed that top 16 to feel successful, but you know, I can't complain. We started off in a car, complete privateer, and then we ended up catching a ride mid-season with a team that, you know, is one of the best. So I definitely can't complain. I'd like to thank all my sponsors for the BMW, which is BC Racing, Nonstop Tuning, Turbo by Garrett, Vibrant Performance, Active Auto Work, Hand-Cooked Tires, Carbon Wraps, Precision Sport Industries, Sean Love Racing, and Chris Leone Motorsports, who built the cage in the E46. And for the Mazda, I'd like to thank Bergenholtz, first of all, for giving me the opportunity to drive with them. Nitto Tires, we also had BC Racing on that car, Mazda Tricks, Lucas Oil, again Turbo by Garrett, and I'd like to thank Cody for shooting all these videos and dealing with all my shit. So, you know, we're going to try hard in the off-season and dial in a car. We don't really have a deal as of right now. We're finishing some stuff up, and you know, stay close and tuned for our end-of-the-year video. Thanks, guys.
Why you turn away in the basement?